Is it really possible that people conspire against their own family for wealth, right within their own home? Even today, something like this was about to happen. As the wife held the cup of soup, her husband and his sister watched her with a look that made it clear. They were finally going to do what they had planned all along. But what happened next? Before you find out, make sure to subscribe to my channel. The cold wind drifted through the fields and entered the house. Outside the window, a damp fog had settled, while inside the fire crackled warmly, filling the room with a comforting heat. I, Alina, sat at the dining table. My husband, Jimmy, placed a steaming bowl of soup in front of me with a peculiar smile. His smile was as deep as it was cold. I made this soup especially for you. It's important that you take the first sip, Jimmy said, his eyes fixed on me. I picked up the bowl, but an odd metallic scent invaded my nostrils. My heart pounded. This wasn't the first time Jimmy had tried to pressure me into something. Ever since our marriage, every time I ate at his sister Maria's house, I would fall sick, headaches, dizziness, and sometimes even a condition so severe that I had to be hospitalized. Each time, Jimmy would brush it off, saying, "Maybe you caught a cold," or "the food was probably too heavy for you." But now, I was beginning to understand that this was no coincidence. Maria sat by the fireplace, stirring her soup with a spoon. Her face carried the usual sweet smile, but I knew there was another story hidden behind it. "Jimmy worked really hard to learn this recipe just for you," Maria said with a playful wink. My hands turned cold. I glanced at the soup, then at Jimmy and Maria. They were both watching me expectantly. For a moment, I felt that if I drank this soup, something strange was about to happen. I steadied my hands, hid my unease, and lifted the bowl. I pretended to take a sip, but never let the soup touch my lips. Then I quickly stood up. "Maria, can I use your study? I need to make an important call." As I walked away, I played a small trick. With a subtle motion of my hands, I secretly switched my bowl with Maria's before leaving. My heartbeat quickened. Now, I just had to wait and see what happened. As soon as I stood near the study, my heartbeat quickened. The only source of warmth in the room was the fire, casting a faint glow against the cold weather. Outside, a sharp gust of wind hit the window, causing a thin layer of frost to form on the glass. I hid, watching closely, not taking my eyes off Maria and Jimmy for even a second. Maria took a sip of the soup. A few seconds passed, and then her hands slowly began to tremble. At first, she didn't seem to notice, but when sudden jolts ran through her fingers, her face twisted in shock. She placed the spoon on the table and stared at her hands. "Jimmy." Her voice was faint and shaky. I feel strange." Jimmy's eyes widened instantly. He sprang from his seat, but by then, the color had already drained from Maria's face. Dark circles began to form under her eyes, as if the blood was slowly leaving her body. "Maria, this soup wasn't meant for you." Jimmy panicked. Everything clicked into place. They were poisoning me. And not just to make me miss a presentation, but to slowly destroy me over time. How many months had passed where I kept falling sick, and Jimmy always made up some excuse. "Maybe you caught a cold, or the food must have been too heavy for you." But now, the truth was right in front of me. I stepped out of the study. My hands were cold, but inside, I felt an unfamiliar strength. I pressed the record button on my phone and looked straight at Jimmy. "Jimmy, tell me, what is going on here?" My tone had turned firm. Maria looked at me anxiously. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She had always acted confident and innocent, but today, her real face was coming to light. "You switched the bowls?" Her words were barely audible, as if her throat had gone dry. I chose to stay silent. I only needed to observe their reactions. Maria gripped the edge of her chair tightly, as if she were about to collapse. Her breathing became heavy, her trembling hands growing weaker. Jimmy frantically looked around, unsure of what to do. I'll call an ambulance. He fumbled to grab his phone, but I had already dialed 911. Emergency services? Yes, I need an ambulance immediately. Someone has been poisoned. 17th Street, Maple Villa. Send help fast. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding inside my chest. Jimmy's face turned pale. His fingers hovered over his phone, but he now understood. I was one step ahead of him. Maria's condition worsened. Her head drooped, and she tried to grip the table for support, but her strength was fading. Jimmy, you said just a small dose. Her voice trembled. I quickly turned on my phone's camera and started recording every moment. Jimmy was panicking now. Maria, shut up. This wasn't supposed to happen. Maria looked at him, her face twisted with pain and betrayal. For the first time, she realized that everything was slipping out of her control. In the distance, sirens began to wail. The ambulance was approaching. I kept holding my phone, still recording. Maria's frightened eyes met mine. Alina, she whispered. You figured it out? I exhaled deeply and looked at her. I figured it out a long time ago, Maria. I was just gathering proof. The door burst open and paramedics rushed inside. Jimmy instinctively stepped back, as if trying to distance himself from his own crime. What's the patient's condition? A nurse asked. The soup was poisoned, I stated firmly. And I have reason to believe this isn't the first time. One of the paramedics lifted Maria, but her hands were still trembling. Jimmy tried to step away, but the guilt on his face was undeniable. I looked at them one last time and said, The truth can't stay hidden forever, Jimmy. You'll have to face the consequences of what you've done. And then, the ambulance doors shut. Maria was being taken away, and Jimmy slumped into a chair, his face devoid of color. For the first time, I felt it. I had won. In the hospital's emergency ward, Maria's medical tests exposed everything. Her blood tests revealed traces of poison, a specific chemical. The doctor shook his head. This chemical isn't found in normal medicines. It only has one purpose: to slowly kill someone. The police checked Jimmy and Maria's phones, and their text messages made everything crystal clear. Jimmy had written, Maria, this time, increase the dose a little so Alina can't make it to her presentation. Maria had replied, yes, just a little more, and she won't even be able to get out of bed. Darkness clouded my vision. This wasn't just about stopping me from giving a presentation. They had been trying to slowly kill me. When Jimmy was arrested, he looked at me one last time and said, Alina, we were only trying to help you. You were overworking yourself. My blood boiled with rage. Help me! You were helping me by poisoning me. Maria stayed silent. Her face had turned pale, as if she couldn't believe she had actually been caught. But I knew better. This was just another act. Jimmy and Maria kept telling lies in court, but as the evidence mounted against them, their excuses became useless. I had their messages, recordings, and even the doctor's reports, all proving that this wasn't just some misunderstanding. It was a carefully planned conspiracy. As the judge delivered the verdict in the courtroom, Jimmy's face turned pale. Maria, who always carried herself with ego and confidence, was now nervously wringing her hands. The accused, Jimmy and Maria, are found guilty and sentenced for attempted murder. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. When the handcuffs were placed on them, Jimmy finally looked at me. Alina, this is all wrong. You should have understood. We were only trying to help you. I was exhausted from hearing his lies. Were you helping me or trying to destroy me? That decision is no longer mine. It's now in the hands of justice. That day, as Jimmy and Maria were taken away to prison, I didn't feel happiness. I just felt peace. The kind of peace that only comes with justice. A year passed. Winter had returned, but this time, it wasn't just a season of cold. It was a season of new beginnings. I stood in a grand business conference. The hall was vast, illuminated by elegant chandeliers. In front of me stood a podium where I was about to deliver the keynote speech. The very success Jimmy and Maria tried to keep me from achieving. I had reached it. They wanted to stop me from moving forward. But today, I was one of the city's top marketing executives. I was introduced, and the hall erupted in applause. I stepped forward, ready to begin my speech. Success doesn't come only from hard work. It comes from integrity, I said. To some, these words might have sounded like any other motivational speech. But to me, they carried the weight of my entire life's experience. In life, obstacles always arise. Some people will try to build walls in our path. Sometimes these obstacles are small challenges. Other times, they are carefully crafted conspiracies designed to ruin us. But those who truly want success learn to treat obstacles as just another step to climb. I paused for a moment, my thoughts flickering to Jimmy and Maria. But only for a moment. They were now nothing more than a faded memory, just a distant mark in my past. The people who try to bring you down, the ones who want to destroy your career, they are actually afraid of you, afraid of your progress, your hard work. But the best revenge is not to stoop to their level. The best revenge is to rise even higher. The moment I finished, the hall was filled with applause. My heart was at peace. That night, when I returned to my office, an email was waiting for me. Congratulations, Alina. Your contract has been officially approved. This is just the beginning. You're about to gain even more new clients. I read the email, and a small smile appeared on my face. This was the same contract Maria had tried to stop me from getting. Maria and Jimmy were in jail, but I was still here. And not just alive, I was thriving. I felt no sympathy for them. I only remembered the moment their plan had failed, when Maria had looked at me and spoken just one word. You won, Alina. Yes, I had won. But the true beauty of this victory was that I didn't have to defeat anyone. I had simply stayed true to my hard work and honesty, and success had come to me on its own. I closed my diary and took a deep breath. The best revenge is only one thing: achieving even greater success. And this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new journey.